All right, welcome into the Merrifield Sportsbook Show. It is, I don't even know what episode it is anymore. I think I have on the show sheet, it's episode 20. It's College Football National Championship weekend. It's the NFL Divisional round. We're going to be here to preview it all. I'm Nick Burt, Justin Walsh, Matt Merrifield, Jada Coster. Justin Walsh, we welcome you back once again. A big weekend coming up for you with the Lions finally taking their first steps in the playoffs.
Yes, it's definitely going to be interesting. Obviously, we'll get a little bit more in depth into it as we kind of move forward with the show. I feel good about the game, but not great. So, like I said, I don't want to spoil too much of my picks for later in the show, but definitely looking forward to having a heart attack for 3.5 to 4 hours on Saturday night.
It's always a good way to spend the weekend, honestly. Just nice dying on a couch or in a stadium. That's always fun. Matt Merrifield, we go to you. It's somewhat a big weekend for you also. It's Michigan State this weekend on the ice. I know you were getting prepped to call the game, I believe, tomorrow night at Yost. And then I believe it's back at Munn on Saturday. Big weekend for the green and white on ice.
Oh, yes, should be an absolute blastful weekend. Michigan State and Michigan, I don't know what number meeting it is because both teams' game notes say different numbers. It's somewhere between the 345th meeting and 349th meeting on tomorrow night on Friday night's game. Saturday would, I think, be 350, depending on Michigan State's count, but who actually knows? But should be a fun series. I don't think Michigan's as strong this year. Their goaltending kind of stinks, but then again, they might have legacy games against Michigan State, so we'll have to wait and see. Nick, I do appreciate your picture of former Colts consultant, incredible university president, and father of the greatest defensive coordinator in Michigan State football history, Jim Tressel, sitting behind you. That is just great taste on your part.
We did have to decorate up the place this weekend. Signed Jim Tressel photo. Obviously,
Confirmed, great guy.
Yeah, totally. Nothing much other to say than that. We'll obviously get into the game. This may fall now. Thanks a lot, Matt, because I took it down. But here, we'll just put it right here. Maybe it will stay. I don't know. Jim Tressel, shout out. Great man, totally exonerated. Jada Coster, I can already tell by your enthusiasm coming into this show today that you are just feeling the joy in the city about Neymar coming to play for the greatest manager of all time, Greg Berhalter in the Chicago Fire.
I mean, people are saying Chicago Fire soccer are back. I don't think they've ever actually been good. Maybe the days of Bastian Schweinsteiger, maybe, but the word in the street is that Neymar is coming, and he'll be doing so much flopping on the turf of Soldier Field. It's going to be amazing.
See, that's where the Merrifield Sportsbook comes in, because if this signing actually happens, I cannot wait for the over-under of minutes Neymar actually plays for the Chicago Fire, because it may be in the single digits. He may take 2 steps out on that field at Soldier Field and just completely crumble to the ground. That man is being held up by string and old chewing gum right now. Like, his Achilles is basically nothing. So, hey, Greg Berhalter, though, got to shout out him. Great motivator. Gets the best players to come to the city of Chicago. Jay, I truly can't wait to be there whenever I come to go see a Chicago Fire game. It's going to be incredible.
I mean, you can't make this up. Like, we're not going to get into soccer talk here, but we've been making fun of this man for the last 4 years, and now he plays in our city. Now it's like, why? What have we come to here?
Like, the fact that there is a semi-decent chance that Greg Berhalter is managing a game at Keyworth Stadium this year, and I am working it because of the U.S. Open Cup. Like, God, please, I'm asking one thing. Give me the Chicago Fire DCFC at Keyworth. I need I need to see him in person. Like, I just do. Please, just make that happen. Somebody need it. But as Jay said, we're not here for the soccer talk. If you want soccer talk, go to Top of the Perch on this YouTube channel. Listen, Tottenham Hotspur, it's a disaster right now. I can't say much more than that. It is disgusting, but
I've heard the word relegation being thrown around.
Oh, we're getting in a relegation battle. Hey, what can we say? What can we say? We're going for the cups right now. Give me the FA, give me the Carabao, give me the Europa, and we'll all be good.
Can't give you the Carabao. Sorry, there's another team that's competing for that one.
There is that, but we'll see. We still got to get through a second leg for both of us before we can do anything with that. But let's get into the American football here. As I mentioned, it is college football playoff national championship weekend from Atlanta on Monday night. It's probably an 8:30 kickoff, maybe 8 o'clock. Who knows? It is Notre Dame coming off their basically last-second victory against Penn State, taking on the aforementioned Ohio State Buckeyes, coming off. I wouldn't say it was a complete domination of Texas, but they controlled that game most of the way. The spread in this game, Ohio State is an 8.5-point favorite. Currently, the over-under is 46.5. Jay Walsh, will start with you on this one. Obviously, national championship. This is, I would say, probably the first national championship since I would probably go back to 2012 or 2013 when it was Alabama, Notre Dame, when we have like the two of the biggest brands in college football playing for a national title.
Yeah, I mean, this does kind of feel like a bit of a throwback, and I think it's definitely very interesting that in the first year of the 12-team playoff, where teams have to earn their way into the Final Four and into the championship game, that we've gotten to the point where it was pretty much just the blue bloods. I mean, the Final Four of Texas, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Penn State. You can argue Penn State not being a blue blood, but they're about as close as it gets if they aren't. So definitely just very interesting to think about. And obviously with the lack of SEC in this championship game, another interesting thing to think about. But in terms of the game itself, this is a really weird number, 8.5. I don't love that number, just simply because I think this is definitely a game that if Ohio State comes ready to play like they have throughout the rest of this playoff, they could easily win this game by multiple scores. Or if Notre Dame's defense comes out ready to play, I think this could be a pretty tight game. As is, I think I like Notre Dame to cover, but I like Ohio State to win, just simply because, I mean, Notre Dame's defense has looked very solid. Notre Dame is a team that likes to try to control the ball. I think this is going to be a relatively low-scoring game. So I do like the under here, the under 46.5. And like I said, I think I like Notre Dame plus the 8.5 here, but I do like Ohio State to win.
Matt, we'll go to you next. Obviously, Notre Dame and Ohio State both have, I would say, controlled their way to the final. Notre Dame against Penn State, maybe not so much, but it feels like each game that each team has played, they've kind of controlled it start to finish. It's going to make for an interesting matchup, don't you think, between these two?
Yeah, I think it should be an absolute blast of a matchup. Two teams that are obviously the history behind these two programs. Or if there could be two Yankees in the history of college football, I think both of them would be. But for this matchup specifically, I'm torn because before the college football playoffs started, Nick, you remember I had my futures bet on Ohio State, and I cashed it out, and partially because I was starting to believe further and further in the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I know their quarterbacks kind of stinks. They can't throw the ball down the field. But I love what they have. I love the attitude with Marcus Freeman. I love the leadership he has with his team, the command he has in this team, and just how physically dominant they've been in all but one game against a MAC school this year. But my initial thought after the Ohio State-Michigan game that has proceeded to be true is Ohio State was going to be a team on a mission, and they have been on that mission. They have not wavered. I think it's 8 for a reason, so I'm going to go Ohio State laying the 8. I have too many times thought, the underdog can keep it close, TCU, and plenty of other years where we've seen bigger spreads, and this is one of those games where you'd think it'd be smaller, but I think that's just how good Ohio State is, and if they can open it up with the weapons they have on the outside, I think Notre Dame has the corners to do it, to stay with them, but I'm going to take Ohio State to cover the 8 in this one. I'm rooting for Notre Dame. I do want to make that clear, but I will most likely be placing a wager on Ohio State.
Jay, we'll go to you next. Obviously, Marcus Freeman, former Ohio State player, graduated from Ohio State, now Notre Dame head coach. This felt like his first true tests as a Notre Dame coach going through this playoff. Obviously, the pressure in the playoff much bigger than the regular season. And then on the other side, you have Ryan Day. He's been in the playoffs multiple times, but he's only been to the national championship game once, and they got steamrolled by Alabama, and that was the COVID year, obviously. Ryan Day in big games. I mean, you look at the Michigan games the past few years. You look at, the Georgia game, the Peach Bowl a few years ago. You look at the Clemson Fiesta Bowl in 2019 or something like that, around those years. Ohio State just hasn't seemed to get up for these huge games in the past few years. You think that changes on Monday night and they claim their first national championship since the 2014 season?
No, I do, because you're looking at the teams that he played in those big games. Obviously, we know about Michigan. He can't beat them, obviously, about that. But other teams he's played, I mean, you're facing Georgia a couple of years ago, and that game went on that block kick. I mean, that Georgia's a far better team than I think, than this Notre Dame team is this year. Notre Dame has a great defense. This is going to be tough with them. It's going to be a tough test for Ohio State. Are they going to be able to pass on that secondary with Xavier Watts back there? We're going to find out. I think they'll be able to, but it's going to be a tough challenge. Obviously, Notre Dame's missing Riley Mills, which is one of their best defensive tackles. It's going to be tough to not have him in there, but I think Ohio State gets it done. I think this is the type of team that they're going to be able to do it on, and I just think, Notre Dame's a great story and all, but Ohio State's just a way better team. In terms of the spread, I would probably lean with Ohio State as well. It's a really weird number. I agree with Jay Walsh there. Could definitely see Notre Dame doing a backdoor cover here, but I would probably lean Ohio State minus the 8.5. I just think they're the much better team. Notre Dame's been a great story this year, but Ohio State, they've just been dominant ever since that Michigan game. You can't stop that passing attack. So I'll take Ohio State minus the 8.5. I also do lean the under as well. I think that Notre Dame defense can keep this number a little low, so I would lean the under. I'll also take Ohio State minus the 8.5. So,
I think we've all, at least at some point, mentioned throughout this playoff set, it would be very funny if Notre Dame went on to win the national championship and their one loss was Northern Illinois. Yes, that makes for an absolute great story. Thomas Hamnick, the coach for Northern Illinois, calling Marcus Freeman the next day saying hey, this is how we exploited your defense, basically. That's another great story around this whole season. Ohio State's just, I think they're the better team here. I think Notre Dame has had a really good year. I honestly think if Notre Dame was playing Texas, I think they would probably have a better shot here. Ohio State's just the better team. And I'm looking at this hat right now. You know me, I love my random hats. I'm going to throw on my Buckeye hat. Fun fact about this hat, though, bought it in 2020 off of eBay in preparation for the Michigan game that ended up getting canceled because of COVID. Then I wore this hat to the 2021 Michigan game at the Big House. Ohio State lost. And ever since then, I've worn it on the day of the Michigan-Ohio State game. And Ohio State still has not won with me wearing this hat. So this hat may need to be burned if Notre Dame wins on Monday night. It's possible. But Ohio State is just the far better team here. The line, it's set at that for a reason. I think Ohio State kind of rolls in this one. I actually kind of like the over. I think Ohio State, maybe fourth quarter, starts pulling away a little bit. Notre Dame keeps it close for 3, and then Fourth quarter, Ohio State pulls away and just gets it over. I like the over here, but give me Ohio State minus 8.5. Another interesting stat about this national championship, I figured we could discuss it really quick, that I saw today. This will be the second straight national championship without an SEC team in it. That is the first time this has happened since the 2004 and 2005 seasons, which, of course, USC and Texas won those two national championships. Obviously, we got the expanded playoff this year. Do you think that has made for more? This is just open to anybody. Has it made for more parity, even though, the SEC was right up there with Big Ten and having the most teams in this playoff, and now they just have none? Has that made for more parity, and has the playoff worked the way I think people expected it to?
So I think the answer to that, and kind of to both of the questions that you just posed there, is, did it work the way that people expected it to? Yes, I think it absolutely did, or at least it worked the way that I expected it to, in which, like we said, I mean, the final is about as blue blood as you can get. So I think that was kind of the way that I thought a lot of this was going to go, rather than just having like your SEC teams and then maybe one or two blue bloods here and there. All the blue bloods get a chance, they're going to win their games. So it has gone the way I expected it to go. In terms of increasing parity, I don't know that we can necessarily say that yet, because when I think of parity, I think of multiple like lesser teams having a shot to win a national championship. And when you look at the kind of quote unquote lesser teams that were put into this playoff, really the only one that put up a respectable performance was Arizona State. I mean, Boise State was competitive in that game, but Penn State was never really in danger of losing that game. Obviously Indiana kept it close with the late touchdown, but again, they were never really in that game against Notre Dame. And obviously we also what happened to SMU. So I don't necessarily know that it's created more parity, because I think it's going to be very difficult for like a Cinderella like that, who gets into the playoff as a quote unquote lesser team. I think it's going to be very difficult for them to win 3 to 4 games in a row against the big boys. But I do think that it has created a lane for more of the big boys to get a chance to play for and win national championships.
No, I would agree. And, obviously the reason for the expanded playoff is to give more of these teams a shot. And obviously, we're talking about if the 14 playoff was still around this year, Ohio State would not be in this position. It'd be, it would be like maybe Georgia and a couple, a few of the other teams. But no, I think I agree with Jay Walsh. It's not really parity yet. Obviously, Boise State, getting that bye and them kind of getting curb stomped wasn't really a surprise. I would like, I kind of would like to go and let BCS format, just get the 12 teams in and get those 4 byes. Like, I don't need to be seeing Boise State getting that first round bye. I just don't need it. But I do really like the format. We've had some pretty solid games. They're decent amount of blowouts, but the semifinals were awesome. And some of the quarterfinal games were pretty solid too. Arizona State giving Texas a run for their money. That was a lot of fun to watch. I do like this format a lot. They just need to make a little bit of tweaks to it. And I'm excited what they can do with it in the future, because it's fun to watch, and just honestly more football is better, because just having the 4 teams got a little stale. You had some really good games, but you also saw a lot of blowouts. The more football, the better. You just got to make a little bit of tweaks to it. So,
and I guess the only thing I would add is the one thing I appreciate is the lack of buys. Like, obviously you have the couple weeks off before that first round. And I agree with Jay that I think it should just be top 4 teams get a bye. But we're seeing Notre Dame and Ohio State played that first weekend, but just going into tonight, I think, or Monday night, I should say, and even this last week I think part of the reason why the games were more entertaining is when you're playing 2, 3, 4 weeks in a row, especially now playoff football, there's not as much time to prepare. I think that was the biggest downfall of the playoff prior, was you give Ohio State, into certain years in the BCS title game, you give the 2 best teams, the 2 best coaching staffs, 4 weeks to prepare, you're going to have a great game. But when you give Nick Saban and Alabama or Kirby Smart and Georgia 4 weeks to prepare, they're probably going to beat the crap out of who they play, especially when it's a Michigan State team that just does not have the horses to keep up with them. So I do like, honestly, I think it's better for the sport that there is less prep, less time available to prep, because it allows the games to be closer. So I think that's part of why we're seeing what we've seen, especially in those semifinal games, especially with teams having played their second and third games in a row. I guess everybody in the semifinal didn't get a first round bye. So, but yeah, I think overall, 2 thumbs up. You can't see my thumbs, but 2 thumbs up for the college football playoff expanded format. Go to 24.
So before we kind of move on from there, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off there, Nick.
Oh, you're good.
I like what they did with the format this year. I agree that the 12-team playoff as currently constructed is better than the 4-team playoff as it was constructed before. However, I think we are going to inevitably get to the point where conference championships mean nothing. I mean, we're already basically almost there. And we're basically at the point where every bowl game that isn't in the playoff means nothing. So I am of the opinion that the way that the playoff should work in the future is not a 12-team playoff, but you have the regular season, you play conference championship games, and you have the traditional bowl ties. So, and obviously it's harder to do that with the Pac-12, and you'll have to adjust where necessary. But you have the kind of traditional bowl games with their meaning. And then after the bowl season, you take the best 4 teams and put them in a playoff. So that way conference championships matter, bowl games matter, because you have to win those games to be put into contention for that 4-team playoff. And I think that will kind of solve the solution, or that will be the solution in terms of a lot of people's problem with the 12-team playoff, which is necessarily getting the best teams versus the most deserving. You'll get a chance to show whether you're one of the best teams, because if you are selected to be put into one of those New Year's 6 bowl games, you win that bowl game, you got a very good shot of making it into as one of those final 4 teams. So that's the way that I think it would be best. However, I do think the 12-team playoff as currently constructed is definitely an improvement over what we had before.
I guess my one thing with this playoff in terms of construction is, and we're never going to get a right answer until the league is either shrunk or whatever the future holds for college sports, as we don't know, is just the basis of the SEC bias of who actually are the 12 best teams in the NFL. It doesn't matter if you beat a bad team or a good team. You win 10 games, you're probably in the playoff, or top 6, top 7 records make the playoffs. You win your division, you get a home game. Now, the problem with conference title games, and Nick and I, we've discussed this before about just going back to, you can share a conference title. Now then, who gets the bye? I don't think there should be buys, so I think it's fine if you want to claim and share conference titles. I don't think there's a problem with that, because I don't see the advantage of playing a college football title game. Now, they showed this year that losing that game, a conference title game, does not matter, which it shouldn't. There should be no punishment for playing that extra game, but there's really no advantage, because winning that game, every team that won their conference title then lost in the playoff. So, except for did any of them win or did Georgia won their game, correct? Or who did anybody that won their conference title game? Because there were 5 conference champions. None of them won. Okay, never mind. Yeah, Arizona State. I don't know. I'm blanking on this college football playoff in front of you guys. This is unprepared.
Yeah, none of them won their games in the playoff.
Okay, then that was correct originally. So I guess from that standpoint, why even play the extra game? And I understand TV wants it, but use that. You could honestly, if you get rid of them, you could move Army Navy to that weekend, and then college football is able to just move more swiftly through, and you're done. Not even before MLK Day. Boom, we just shrunk a week off of college football. Whether or not ESPN and Fox want that is a different question, but. That's
that answer is no.
I know
they
that
don't
answer
want
that
to shrink
question.
it, but well, hey, just listen to the great Connor Stallions. Let's just move Army Navy to week 0.
That was Joel Klatt of the
Well, I know, but then Connor Stallions jumped in on it because, he's a noted military graduate, just so you know. But given that, we'll end on that college football wise. I'm sure we'll recap the national championship next week, or at least mention it. Let's move into the NFL divisional round. It is a very interesting week in the NFL. On Saturday, you have both the 1 seeds playing their first game in the playoffs. You have the Texans traveling to Arrowhead to take on the Chiefs. You have the Commanders coming off their victory against the Buccaneers to go to face the Lions. And then on Sunday, it is Eagles-Rams. And then the late game that day is, I think, the game everybody's kind of waiting for. It's that Ravens-Bills game. Matt, we'll start with you. Just kind of what are your overall thoughts on the games this weekend and just who you're thinking moves on to the conference championship game?
On the AFC side, I like the Bills a lot. I think they're the best team in the AFC. I love where they're at. I can't believe they're getting a point at home against this Baltimore team. And I understand Baltimore has looked really strong as of late. They've won, their last 5 games since coming back from that late bye. But they played the Giants. They played the Steelers twice. They did beat down the Texans on Christmas Day, and they beat the Browns. Those might be the easiest schedule you can have coming back. And I was, like you said last week, and I don't want to talk too much on it, but it had nothing to do with it being Jay Walsh's lock. But I think we all kind of saw that coming other than Jay Walsh. The Steelers were just not ready for that football game. Meanwhile, the Bills have looked just as impressive. They had the 1 Week 18 loss to the Patriots, but they beat the Lions on the road. They beat down the Jets. I guess they beat a bad Patriots team before losing to them, but they looked just the better team against the Broncos team that was just had to be the last team in. But I really like where the Bills are at. I think this is the year. It's a great matchup. The 2 best quarterbacks in the league this year in terms of the MVP voting. But I like the Bills at home. Should be a fun weather game too. And then I think the Texans cover, but I do like the Chiefs to win and move on, even though they are 0-2 at 4-3 games over the last 2 months or something like that. Two of their only losses all year. Their 2 only losses this year were at 4-3. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I like the Texans to keep it close, partially because of the Chiefs having the bye.
You going to mention
I didn't know if I was touching the NFC games too or not. I thought it was weird. On the sheet it says AFC only and then NFC, so I didn't know if we were doing both. Okay. NFC side, I'm sorry, Jay Walsh. I like the Commanders to cover the 9.5 simply because Jaden Daniels is a mobile quarterback. The devil on my shoulder is saying it's 9.5 for a reason, bet the Lions. So I don't know who I'm actually going to place money on, but I just something about being a mobile quarterback, Lions having the bye. The defense played really well on that Sunday Night Football game. I still think the defense will be good, but will they play to that level? I don't know. Jaden Daniels is a really good playmaker, and we're about to find out.
Lovely.
That was great breakdown right there about the.
That's karma for him picking against the Lions.
Jay, we'll just go to you next. We'll get Matt back in here eventually, hopefully. But kind of your overall thoughts on the NFL slate this weekend.
Matt's back at college when his Wi-Fi crashes out. I'm like that. Love that.
No surprise there.
Yes, stellar Wi-Fi. Shout out. I had to deal with that for the last 3 years. So fun. So for these games, we'll go to Houston, Kansas City. I like the Texans to cover this number. The Chiefs have had 23 days off for their starters. I do think that kind of plays a factor in. And the Chiefs have been in a lot of close games this year. Now they do find a way to win games, but that's a large spread. I like the Texans in the 8.5. I'll take the Chiefs to win, but Texans, they played really well in that Chargers game. They dismantled Jim Harbaugh and those guys. So I like Texans to keep it close. Commanders, Lions. I'm leaning with the Lions here. The Lions are just a wagon. They got Dave Montgomery back. Their defense is much better. They're just a machine right now. And Commanders are a great story. I picked against them last week, but they're not going into Ford Field and keeping this really close. I don't see that happening. With the mobile quarterback thing, with what Matt said, I think that could be that's how Commanders could keep this close, but the Lions are playing great football right now. I think they're going to win the Super Bowl, so I will take them minus the 8.5. Rams, Eagles, I love the Rams. I think the Rams have a chance to win this game outright. I mean, they're a dangerous team. Philly has got some pass game issues. They're good, but the Rams are very, very hot right now, so I will take the Rams plus the 6. I honestly kind of like them to win. If I were to pick for a winner, I'd probably go Eagles, but I like the Rams to keep this pretty close. And then Baltimore and Buffalo, I do like Buffalo to win this. I think the Lamar Jackson playoff factor, I mean, look, they beat a Steelers team that was kind of checked out, but I mean, are they going to go into Buffalo and beat Josh Allen, who's probably going to win MVP? I don't see that. So I will go Buffalo plus the 1.5. I'm pretty surprised that they're a 1.5 point dog here. So I will go Buffalo as well. I think Buffalo, honestly, I think they'll be meeting Detroit in the Super Bowl. So I'll take Buffalo.
Jay Walsh, we'll go to you next. Your overall kind of thoughts on the weekend, even though we already know where you're going with one of the picks.
Well, I'll start with that game first, just because obviously I will be. I have to take my Lions. I have to do it, but as I said before, in the introduction to the show, I feel good about this game, not great. And it is partially because of what Matt brought up, which is Jaden Daniels is a very mobile quarterback, and Aaron Glenn defenses usually tend to struggle against mobile quarterbacks. I think they are going to get their points. However, the Commanders' defense is the part of their team that I think is going to let them down. I could easily see that game being like a 42-28 type game, just simply because I don't think they're going to be able to stop the Lions on offense. And the thing that I look at, and I looked at it a couple days ago when the lines were relatively fresh, and I'm looking at it now. It's changed just a little bit, but when it first opened up, there were 6 Lions players with better anytime touchdown odds than anyone on the Commanders. There were 6. So that tells me that Vegas thinks this is going to be a blowout. I don't necessarily agree that it's going to be a blowout, but like I said, I think the Commanders are going to have trouble stopping the Lions on offense. I like the Lions to cover in this one. As for the other Saturday game, I'm kind of leaning with Jay on this one. I like the Texans to cover here, but I think the Chiefs win. If it was anyone but the Chiefs, I would honestly probably be taking the Texans to win this matchup. They looked very good after, and I will admit I was wrong. I called them a dead team. They looked like they were dead in the water, and then they just went out and absolutely bullied the Chargers. Obviously, when your quarterback throws, what did he throw? 4 interceptions in that game. Hard to bounce back from. Jared Goff threw 5 and 1. But anyway, I don't know where that came from. But they're a very good team. They're a very talented team. So I think they can cover this. And Kansas City, the last several years, has kind of reverted into the mode of they're going to do what they need to do to win and exactly what they need to do to win. So I think they're going to win this, but they're going to win it close. In terms of the Sunday games, Rams-Eagles, I think, has the potential to be the best game of this slate. I think both of these teams are really talented. I'm really upset that the Lions, frankly, that the Lions have to go through the winner of this game. The thing I look at, because honestly, if you were telling me that this game was played on a neutral field in totally normal conditions, I'd probably pick the Rams to win. They're hot. They have a great offense. They have a solid defense, and they have a quarterback who's been there before. They have a quarterback who's won in the playoffs before. Experience matters. However, the fact that it's being played in Philly, the fact that it's being played outside, and the fact that it is supposed to snow in Philly on Sunday leads me to believe that this is going to be a Saquon Barkley game. I like the Eagles to cover here. Like I said, I think the Rams are a very good team. Frankly, if you told me I had my pick of which of these two teams that the Lions would play in the NFC Championship, I'd have to think about it. But like I said, because it's a snow game in Philly, I do like the Eagles to cover here. In terms of Ravens-Bills, I said that Eagles-Rams might be the best game. This is the other contender. This is obviously you've got the number 1 and number 2 MVP contenders going off in this game. Kind of for similar reasons, I'm going to go Buffalo here. At Buffalo, outside in the cold. I don't think it's supposed to snow in Buffalo on Sunday. I do think it's supposed to snow on Saturday, so the game may be played in snow, but I don't think it's going to be actively snowing. I think it's going to be tough for the Ravens to do what they want to do. And as somebody who has seen Buffalo up close and personal, when they are on, they are an absolute wagon. And it is very difficult to stop them. So I'm taking Buffalo to win that game.
Yeah, it feels like the AFC side of things seem more figured out this weekend than the NFC. I think the Chiefs probably roll against the Texans. I mean, it's tradition at this point. Texans win their 4:30 game in the wild card. People start hyping them up. Oh, maybe the Texans aren't as bad as they usually are. And then they get absolutely boat raced in the divisional round against whoever they play. I'm not going to say it's totally the same vibes with this one, but Kansas City is still most likely going to roll in this one. The fact it's in Buffalo, I think Buffalo wins. Again, this may just be personal bias, setting in, but I don't like the Ravens. So Buffalo is a better option to me. I like the Bills in this one. I think the NFC side, because at some point somebody's going to get upset this weekend. I think it's more likely it comes on the NFC side than it is the AFC. If the Lions win on Saturday against the Commanders, which I think they do, think they probably end up covering too. If I'm a Lions fan or a Lions player, I'm praying to God the Eagles win on Sunday. Because if you are facing the Rams for a spot in the Super Bowl, Matthew Stafford on the other side, obviously they've been in that situation before. I know Lions were in the NFC Championship last year, but it's kind of a different feeling when you're playing in that big of a game. And everything that's going to be put into that if the Rams win on Sunday, if I was a Lions player, I'm praying to God that the Eagles win. Because one, I don't think the Eagles look right now. Jalen Hurts isn't healthy. I don't think he's healthy at all. I think it could have been a lot worse on Sunday against the Packers. Something is clearly affecting him right now. Most likely, a concussion that put him out for 3 weeks. But something just doesn't look right with him. I don't think this Eagles team is as good as people think they are. I think they're a very beatable team, which is why I think the Rams have a chance this weekend, because the Rams are one of the hotter teams in football right now. I know they lost that Week 18 game, but honestly, I wouldn't put it past Sean McVay doing that strategically to get this route, because no matter what, when you lost that game, you were going to be facing the team that lost the NFC North. And most likely it felt like they were just going to come out flat because of all the emotions that went into a week before. And I mean, look what happened to Minnesota. That's what happened. This Rams team scares me. They look really good. It seems like they're rolling into form right now. I don't know if they get it done in Philadelphia. So I'm going to take the Eagles there. I think the Lions end up winning. So overall, I think, honestly, 7 of the 8 teams I could really see playing for a conference title next week. The only one is Houston. And now that I say that, Houston is going to win on Saturday. But honestly, I could see any of these teams winning their games this weekend. I think it's that kind of evenly matched. I know the spreads don't seem that way, but I think this is quite an easily evenly matched weekend. Matt, we do welcome you back. I know you wanted to close out, so I know you only had really the Rams game, so just close us out on that one.
Yeah, my last pick is going to be the Rams as well. You guys kind of mentioned it, and I was going to get into it. I don't think Jalen Hurts looks right. I think the Rams they're a really sneaky good team with the weapons they have on offense, a strong defense, and kind of similar to while their defense I don't think is quite as good on paper as the Eagles. I do like the fact that there's just a group of guys that are all really strong. No star on the team, obviously, with no more. There's a lot of their stars being gone, so I'm a huge fan of. I just really like the Rams this weekend. One thing I did look in terms of the 1 seed for the Chiefs and Lions, since going to 7 teams, I believe it was 2020 during COVID was the first time they went to the 7 team on each side. At least, I don't know what the spreads were in these games, but considering it's 8.5 and 9.5 respectively, at least one of those games on the other side was the underdog covered or kept a touchdown or less. I don't know if they officially covered or not because I don't know the spreads. So I think it's safe to say the Lions or the Chiefs, one of them at the very least, will not cover. I think I would lean the Texans in that spot. That's why I'm going to take them officially, but just keep that for thought. I know usually there's an upset, but they're also the last couple games with the 1 seed being the only one with the bye. They usually, one of them does not cover. Maybe both sometimes, but usually they both win. I think only once they haven't, the 1 seed hasn't won.
Yeah, that's going to be quite interesting to see how that plays out this weekend, obviously. Will the rest help both sides? The Chiefs weren't as injured as the Lions have been. I mean, this Lions team is half on the IR, basically. It felt like at one point this season. Slowly, it seems like everybody's coming back, even though I don't think some of them should be, but here we are anyways. That is going to be an interesting weekend in the NFL with the divisional round. My biggest complaint is I hate the scheduling for Sunday. Like, why are we kicking off the Ravens game at 6:30? I know the last game of the divisional round every year is at 6:30. Why are we not just kicking off at 8:20, just like it is every other weekend? Like, what are we doing? What are we doing, NFL? That's all I got to say. So that's going to wrap it up for Merrifield Sportsbook Show. If you guys have any last parting shots, let's get them out now.
Go Lions.
Wow. Incredible unbiased journalism right there from Justin Walsh.
Some point we'll get into our college basketball picks to finish out the year coming up in the next couple of weeks. But for thoughts on the games that are coming up on Saturday or Sunday, but Rutgers at home, take them. If Rutgers on the road, do not take them. Nebraska at home, take them. Nebraska on the road, do not take them. You guys are laughing, which means I'll probably sound pixelated as hell. But blame Stellar Wi-Fi. Blame them.
Incredible. That's no notes.
Well, I mean, you could do DePaul at Georgetown tomorrow at 7:00. They actually kept it close.
Bet DePaul. All of it on DePaul.
Exactly. I mean, they kept it close against the top 10 team. That's an accomplishment at this point. I mean,
Jay, we can't keep doing this. We can't keep going to overtime and losing these games. We can't.
You texted me saying that congrats to Marquette because DePaul won't get it done. Yeah, I mean, that checks out. Not surprising.
That Seton Hall game where they blew that lead, it broke me. It broke me on DePaul. I'm sorry. I've been broken since then. It's so sad. They were so close to greatness, and it's just all gone now. Now they got to face Georgetown on whatever day it is, Friday, Saturday. I don't know anymore. That used to be a game that we would get excited for because Patrick Ewing only needed one more year to get his guys in. And here we are now, and Ed Cooley actually has this Georgetown team rolling. I know they've lost 3 straight, but they're against 3 best teams in the conference. And they kept it close. So I don't know.
This is disgusting.
Scomons.
That's right, Scomons.
I do just want to go back to the NFL here a little bit. There was a lot of talk on Twitter about FanDuel's anytime touchdown odds for Jahmyr Gibbs. I know we mentioned it in our group chat that people were apparently saying that Jahmyr Gibbs minus 450 for anytime touchdown score was ridiculous odds. As we pointed out, they clearly were not paying attention during Mountain West football this season and did not see the absolute monstrosities that were Ashton Genty anytime touchdowns, but that's beside the point. I do just want to let anyone who's listening know the odds for Jahmyr Gibbs anytime touchdown have increased, or they've gotten better. They are now currently at minus 250. So if you were thinking about making that bet, now is probably the best time to do that.
Thank you, Justin Walsh, for giving us that update. One more thing before we close. I texted about it last night. That UMass Fordham game was just absolutely insane. That is A10 basketball at its finest. 9 foul outs, the most in an NCAA game ever. What an incredible moment for the Rose Hill Gymnasium in its 100th year to watch that. Absolutely. It was a beautiful game. That was a beautiful game of basketball.
That was what? Was it over 100 total free throws shot in that game?
I believe we ended up, it was like 114, something around there.
Beautiful. Could not ask for a better viewing experience.
It honestly, it was the greatest game. It was the greatest game in A10 basketball history. It's such a shame UMass is leaving that conference because UMass is that conference. They are not a MAC school. They are A10, and it's a shame football drives these decisions. But we're just going to leave it there. Shout out Fordham, who suspended their coach today for recruiting violations. Very hard to get recruiting violations in the year 2025, but here we are. But
what do you think he did? What do you have to do to get a recruiting violation in the NIL era?
I saw the reasoning. I got to pull it up here because it seems something very stupid. Let's see.
Did he buy someone a cheeseburger?
It may have been. Okay, the reason for 4-game suspension was because they spent more than the allowable limit on recruits' entertainment expenses. No money was given to recruits.
Entertainment expenses?
Hey, I don't know. Entertainment expenses really could be anything in the Bronx. But and the thing about all of it is too, like, Fordham hasn't even got like a notice of allegations yet from the NCAA. Like this is just self-imposed. So, you know what? Shout out to the Rams. Shout out Rose Hill Gymnasium.
They were showing those kids a good time.
Game. Yeah. I mean, what a time to be alive. We're going to wrap it up now. For Justin.
Kind of getting a little off the rails here.
Yeah, it's just time to wrap it. Jay DeCoster, Matt Merrifield, Nick Burt, we are signing off for this week. We will see you back here next week to preview the NFL Conference Championship games here on the Merrifield Sportsbook Show.